is a bit of a weird week, so let's do it. Being all over the place. Hiya. Thank you so much for joining me on my writing blog where I document writing a first draft while running an indie imprint and also having a 9 to 5. As I said, this week is weird. Actually was off work for yesterday, so basically the whole schedule is out of the window. So we're starting on Wednesday. I've just nipped out to the market. As you might see from how I'm dressed, we have recently had like a really sudden sort of it was really mild and then the temperatures plummeted. So um that concerns me, and as I'm usually not writing at home. So if outside is really horrible like today, where sort of this morning it was sleeting, I don't tend to write a lot because I don't want to get out of the house. Sometimes it changes, and then I can write at home. I don't prefer it because I need a bit of hubbub around me. So yesterday I actually managed to write quite a few bits on my day off. We are now in chapter 20 of 24, roughly, is what I'm envisioning for The Sealskin Throne, my short novel that I'm working on at the moment. And because we're starting on a Wednesday, I'm usually going to my local market on a Wednesday and show you what I've got. And we start off with some okra because I have some mushrooms and some aubergine left over, and then I can just put the okra in. Maybe I'm doing okra fries. Let's see. Um, 2 custard apples because they've sort of recently started stocking them, and I really like them, though these are still rock hard. They need to ripen up a fair bit. 1 orange, 1 head of cabbage. This is my favorite kind of cabbage, the pointy kind. And I recently started just chopping it into big chunks, some oil, some paprika, some salt, put it in the oven, and it's magic. So this is why I wanted to go out to the market today because I need another one of those. And then 1 big radish. So in a weird way, I think because at home we usually used to have these in the wintertime, so it's sort of connected to winter for me. And then yesterday I got an excellent uh, message. I'm also apart from the books, I'm also doing yarn stuff, and I'm selling my crafted projects and some yarn in a local community shop. And they said, "Oh, the stuff that you brought in 2 days ago has already been sold. So now I need to replace it." And I think I'm going to replace it with a scarf made from this wool, and that's a teaswater blended with a tiny bit of orange silk. So yeah, I have a bit of um, this with grey silk still left, so I'm going to make up like a reasonably big scarf with these ones to sell, because the one that was sold so quickly was sort of the same blend. So I'm thinking that might be something that is sold reasonably quickly as well. Oh, you never know. I definitely did not expect the last one to go as fast as it did. Um, Craft project wise, I'm knitting myself some socks at the moment. The first one's finished. This is the next one, so I don't really have that much to go. Hopefully, I can finish it this evening. Um, and I'm also, I think, due to a stationery workshop that I attended at a writing convention, I'm getting back into fountain pens. And like I've always liked to write with fountain pens, but also Yeah, the more elaborate kind. I have my trusty Parker, which is I only bought I think a year or so ago, which I really like. It's quite thin, like and quite short compared to other pens. But I really enjoy the feel of it. And then I recently brought back some older fountain pens, and one of them, they were the more fancy kind, with the reservoir that you screw up and screw down. And one of them I realized had a reservoir that was broken, but I kept it because I keep so many things that are broken, and I thought somehow I could use that again. And it was a big thing for me to actually throw this one out, but this one was actually one with a thicker nib, and so I knew that it was really a much older fountain pen because I used to quite enjoy the thick nibs, and now I don't really like them anymore. I like a bit of a finer one, not extra fine, but sort of probably a medium one. So I got some new inks to show you. Um, the first one is this. It's called Teal, but for my thinking, it's more of a bluish green. For me, teal is a bit more blue, but I still like the color. And then I got some sort of grayish purple, which I also really like. Um, I haven't really. I tried this one out in the fountain pen that didn't work anymore, so I don't really know what it's looking like if it really flows really well. So at some point, I'm going to give this a try as well. Um, I'm going through phases with the writing. A bit of a shame is that the current notebook that I'm writing in is not suitable for fountain pens because the paper is not of a good enough quality. Um, but I still have like a better notebook left. And I'm probably, as Black Friday approaches, I'm going to keep my eye out for deals on good notebooks so I can actually start writing the longer projects with a fountain pen again. Um, I really appreciate people who try to aestheticize the writing process. I'm doing a bit of that, but I need to be honest. My setup is not aesthetic at all. Because I'm not writing at home as anyway. I don't really have like a writing cave. Though what I recently saw and really liked the idea of picking a basically a candle for each project, so have like a scent associated with a certain book that you're writing. But because I usually don't write at home, um, and that's doesn't really work for me. And I don't want to go the route of scented inks. I think it's a bit, I don't know. Um, that might be a bit over the top, but I really, really like the idea. I used to do that a bit when I'm working, then I'm sort of okay, yes, we try to make it a bit cozy. Um, but I know because my desk is so small, I always feel a bit nervous about having a candle amidst everything on it. So for now, we're going with lovely colored inks. Let's see if that does anything. Um, like state of mind wise, we are working towards. So basically, one of the big reveals has happened in the Sealskin Throne. It's basically the one that I always wanted to be there, but I want something more intricate as well because I think the actually like the big twist is something that you see coming. Um, but I want so basically the one who's truly behind it to be a bit of a surprise, and that's what I'm working on at the moment. It's always like a weird time in a manuscript. Um, I talked about this in length when in the last installment of the vlog, sort of the last season, when I was finishing off a much longer manuscript. For this one, because it's short, I'm going through all the the turmoil in a much shorter time period, and I think that sort of can take its toll, which is also why I'm sort of slowing down And I've also started to work in the beta reader feedback for a season of Frosted Blossom, which is sort of a standalone. It's still in my world, but it's that not that much connected to the other stories. And uh, that's the thing is, I noticed, yes, I can, there's some feedback that I can work in as I'm just going through, but essentially what I need to do is a whole nother pass through the manuscript, and that is going to take a bit more time. So I've sort of designated the Thanksgiving weekend to do that, or at least to finish it up. I have done like one thing, but I've left myself so many so many comments that I need to follow up on. It does not really feel like progress on that thing. Again, this season is a shorter one as well, sort of 60,000, I think 65,000 words. And I think that's where, at the moment, where my preference is for, or at least what I'm really trying to do is sort of shorter standalones, um, because I enjoy writing series very much. That used to be my default. Um, but as of now, I have one complete series published, the Slow Moon series, 6 volumes out in the world. And it made me aware of the problems that can come with series. Obviously, as an indie author, you're always told, oh, you need to write a series, you need to write a series to sort of pull readers from one volume to the other. But I think because I'm writing, yes, it's fantasy, but it's not fantasy romance. Um, and it's sort of I found it quite difficult to, because I don't have the budget for regular to do ads regularly. And if your series is, as it is with Slow Moon, in effect one big book, that's a different thing than writing, oh yes, I'm writing about this couple, and the next volume is about this couple, and the next couple is sort of the um I don't think that the series whole, it might still work, but it's very difficult to market for like my kind of marketing, I think. Especially when you're in like at a market, at a fair, and you sit there with your series, and obviously people only buy the first one. I think it's always good to show, yes, it continues, but I'm still sort of in the, as I'm just started, that I don't have many people who are in the middle of the series. That also might be because I decided to rapid release the series. So basically, in 2 years, everything was out there. Um, in a way, but then it's also, for me, I saw it more as a exercise in trust. So yes, this author can finish a series. Yes, there's sort of a backlist that I can go to if I like one of the later ones. That was more of my idea. Um, I'm not saying that this strategy has redeemed itself. I don't, at the moment, I'm very much still trying to get stuff off the ground. But that's okay. I'm still enjoying all the conventions that I'm doing, on the events that I'm doing. That still fun. So that is more sort of the connection with readers, what I'm about. I'm very aware, as I mentioned before, that my books are not for everyone, that there might be a much smaller readership for them, but I'm convinced that there's a readership. I just need to sort of find them, and that's, compared to other books, that's going to take a fair bit of time, and to just have some patience, and be a bit sort of be a bit easy on myself. That is not. you know, I very much like to think that as indie authors, we are colleagues. We are not in any sort of competition with each other's, especially as someone who doesn't write to market. I'm in a whole different bracket than so many of the other um, fantasy offerings out there, and I know that with like indie publishing, so much is about identifying a trend, jumping on that trend, put your spin on it, and capture new readers. My timelines are very much more orientated on like traditional timelines because I'm not pushing out stuff like as fast as I can. I sit on the stuff. I usually sort of at least 2 or 3 years go by from first draft finish to publishing. There's a financial constraint, but also just how I like to work. I like to have as much distance between the project and sort of the amount of that my heart is involved in the project than I possibly can. And that's how sort of the long timelines come about. It also gives me flexibility because there's a pipeline to reorder publication orders, and especially with the small, like shorter standalones, to pull them forward, um, and then do like basically the series is still continuing on its own timeline, or the books that are in the series are running on a timeline, but the standalones basically blink in and out um, of the history. And I think doing basically the series progression, like one a year, and have like another project like a novella be the autumn book, that's sort of how I'm seeing my strategy. Again, I don't know if that will work, but I think rapid releasing Slow Moon has taught me that actually firing out the books does not give each book the time to breathe it deserves. And so this is why I'm sort of not delaying, but sort of dropping the series like once a year, more like than like every other month or so. Um, and then yesterday I went book shopping, and of course, sort of for the 5 by 5 by 8 books, I found a suitable box, but the 6 by 9 um, hardback, that's going to be there. Sort of there was no in between. They were either too shallow or they were just yeah, too wide. It's just too big. Um, and so I had to compromise a bit with like what I wanted to get. I think I'm going to have the like the big series, the 6 by 9 series in a different box, and the 6 by 8s and the novellas are all going to be in the little boxes. Uh, I still don't know how where to put them here. It's just I know I don't want them to keep them in the car over the winter. Um, a friend of mine offered me some storage space at some point. I think I need to take up on that offer and make sure that everything's sort of put away nicely. And I think that's sort of for the start of the vlog. As you can see, is sort of there's always going stuff is going on. I have one more event that is in mid-December, sort of the Christmas market event. Um, I'm probably going to make this like a book focused thing, but have a bit of yarn on the side. I think that's how I'm going to do it. Um, and then yeah, just after that, I can put stuff away and have a bit of a break. I'm not sure whether I'm going to vlog during that time. Maybe I'm really going to take a Christmas break. Um, I'm sure I'll work on some project or other. I'm a bit conflicted about taking the laptop with me, and at the moment, I'm not really wanting to do that, but I might have to. And yeah, that's it for the first bit of the vlog. Thank you so much for being here, and see you in a bit. It's Friday, and I've just written what I think is the climactic theme of the Sealskin Throne. I think this draft is the messiest I've ever had. And I I might have mentioned it already, but I recently saw a comment by someone who also, well, not a comment, but a post by someone who also writes their first drafts longhand. And they basically said, for me, writing a longhand is the point of um, like having it be as messy as it can be, as allowing myself to be messy, because there are strike throughs and sort of bubbles and notes in the margins. Because when you handwrite, you can't really go back and edit a paragraph like you would on a laptop. And I think I agree with that. Um, since I've read that, I think I've sort of come to appreciate that handwriting a first draft works against the perfectionism. I definitely have an issue with perfectionism as well, maybe in other directions, but it's also, it does not, because I think when you're typing it in, it already looks really clean. And so you might not, it sort of hides the fact that actually there's a whole lot of work still to come. With a handwritten draft, you see that there's a whole lot of work in it still. Um, and that might sort of give me more permission to tweak, to skip, to leave out stuff when I'm creating the second draft, because it's not meant to be perfect yet. It's just a collection of scribbles that might at some point amount to something, but we are only at the very beginning of a long, long process. And yes, with a handwritten draft, this fact is unavoidable. You can see it in the state of the manuscript itself. So it's really funny that I've been thinking about that so much, as I'm sort of not rewriting the first draft already in my head, but sort of definitely sort of, oh no, I need to change so many things. I've definitely changed sort of who killed whom, just for motivation things, to make more sense at some point. Um, I, in some ways, this kind of writing, where you have a plot structure, but then you're discovery writing the rest of it, I think is probably always going to be more messy, because um, the discovery bits not necessarily fit in well with the framework, and then you have to tweak both to bring it together. I've also been thinking a lot about structure because I could not point to my stories and say, oh, this has like a classic three-act structure with this is where the climax is, this is where I this is not how I think about my projects, and I'm in awe of everyone who can basically do an outline with exactly, oh, this here the tension needs to grow, this one here it needs to fall and sort of give sort of a satisfying thing. It's not how it works for me, because um if I've mapped out the tension like that, I would not have the motivation to write it. I think I write primarily to entertain myself, to tell myself the story. And I mean, that's another famous thing said about first drafts, that, yeah, this is why you're writing a first draft. It's not for anyone else to see but you. I'm thinking I'm taking that quite literally, like in my process, how I'm how I'm writing, that I'm the reader of the story even as I'm writing it, which is also a reason why I only can do it chronologically. Um, I might go back and add a scene here and there, but the main story is always told per discovery writing, um, unless I have like a something like this framework that I'm working in for the Seaskin Throne, but is a very loose framework, and stuff changes within it all the bloody time. Um, which is why I need to go back and tweak so much. But I think I'm also getting better at that and at realizing that how many layers each manuscript has right before it goes even to copy editing, and then there are like a couple more layers are coming in. But yeah, I think once I've sort of embraced the messiness, I think it was, for me, it was an important step towards the way of finishing things. And I think I'm not the only person who feels like that. Um, it's sort of almost the same thing as if you get like a really lovely notebook, but for fear of spoiling it, you never use it. Um, I think that's some of the same instincts are at play here. So yeah, messiness is something that I've thought about a lot. Um, it's also fun that this is like the first project in a long while that actually has like sort of a soundtrack to it. I used to do playlists for my writing projects, very rudimentary. I haven't done it for a long, long time. In fact, I noticed that a sure sign of my sort of mental health taking a tank is that I've not listening to music enough. So I'm making an effort to listen to my music. And since Everybody Scream from by Florence and the Machine has been released, it's been on my, so I've been hearing it up and down whenever I'm in the car. And it's been a long, long time since I've sort of dove into music in quite the same way, where sort of because you've listened to it so many times and you're still discovering new bits, new snippets of lyrics, because I'm not so much of a lyric person, weirdly enough. I'm if I'm going on vibes, and then if there's like bits of lyrics that fit, that's cool, but it doesn't. need to fit. But because, yeah, I've been listening nonstop, there's still new things to discover. And I think that's just such an like a mark of excellence, I think. Um, I also think this volume, I've had it sort of, I've marked it for, oh, this is dropping now. And then a friend of mine basically sent me a message, oh, have you, um, have you listened to it yet? It's amazing. And then on my way back from Brighton, I put it on, and I think I listened to it 3 times in a row. Yeah, and since then I've not really stopped listening. So whatever the end of year wrap up is probably not going to be a big surprise for me. Um, and with that comes sort of that I'm listening to more music that's sort of um, female sounding voices and a bit more folky, though Everybody's Scream is, I think, quite dark and is much more what I usually go for. Um, and yeah, just I don't know, just fits the project as well. And I think that's sort of the thing. And there's so many, as I said, so many snippets of lyrics that sort of mirror what's going on in the book. Not not necessarily like at the time that I'm. So yeah, if you're, I would be really interested to know whether you need music to write or if it's sort of an extra. Um, for me, it's weird that I don't really listen to the music while I write. It's more like when I'm thinking about the project that this comes to the fore. Um, but yeah, I mean, I see so many writers here on YouTube who listen while they're writing or have like a specific song for their couples or whatnot. Um, and yeah, I find that really fascinating because, especially as I'm not really a person that does that, that is connected to me writing in cafes mostly. Otherwise, it's been so cold. I've been making myself a little hot water bottle when I go to bed, and usually I don't sleep with socks on, but the woolly socks that I knitted recently, I've been wearing those to bed. Um, and it almost annoys me that it's supposed to get warmer quite soon, so it's just a blip. I'd sort of much rather have it that, okay, this is winter now, and then we'll get used to it rather than going up and down, up and down. And but I might be in the minority for that one. But it definitely impacts the way stuff is happening. As I said, I might not go outside very much and not write so much when the weather's like this, though today I had a really good writing session. Really good. So I'm now in chapter 22. Just started chapter 22 after the um that brings me to that has been going around in my head as well. I think I'm really interested in people who are not the ones who wield the power, the political power, but the ones who live with it and the ones who are in the background of political power. And this is sort of something that happens in the Sealskin Throne as well, where the protagonist is not the ruler. They're close to the ruler, but they're not the ruler. And I think that happens quite often in my stories, that um yeah, it's sometimes they are sort of in the entourage of more powerful people, and they need to deal with the powerful people. That's more what interests me than someone who's sort of powering up throughout the book and, oh yeah, it turns out they're the long lost daughter of such and such, and of course they are going to be the king or the queen or the whatever. I don't think that's what my stories are about. My stories are much more about like the loyalty, like realizing that you might have followed someone who did not have your best interest at heart. Um, it's more about the characters who are usually not in the center of attention, not in the spotlight. And I think that can be quite irritating for some readers, which I totally understand, because especially if it's sort of YA adjacent, that usually not what you get. You don't get people who just need to find their place. I think finding one's place is a really big theme in my stories, and finding your place does not mean that you're coming out on top. Um, so one of my favorite things is sort of a side character, friend character, calling the main character out and pulling them down to sort of not so to their level. Because I think too often side characters, especially if they are sort of the gay best friend, the person of color best friend, um, the whatever minority best friend, they are so often used as a foil, and that's what I want to avoid. Um, and because my stories often subvert those expectations, I think people can react to them with irritation. But then I always, yes, think about, I want to tell the stories I'm interested in, and I'm more sort of the real life grit is one of my big things. And it's just not realistic that every protagonist is gets like an excellent power and then does and manages to stay a good person throughout. I don't think that's how it works, to be honest. Um, and I would love to know how you feel about stuff like this. Are you not interested in people who are around power and are sometimes like negatively affected by power? Do you prefer to read stories about people who wield the power? Yeah, let me know. Um, and I think that's where I'm stopping this segment. It's already really long. I've just rambled on, and I need to make myself something to eat. See you in a bit. It's Monday morning, and I've written a bit over sort of the rest of the weekend. Um, Yesterday, actually, after swimming, my hands were so cold that I couldn't really write. I need to invest in a better pair of gloves. Um, but I've just started chapter 23, which I think is going to be the last full chapter of the Sealskin Throne. So it's been really strange because I remember with um, Dragon Watch, sort of the ups and downs, maybe because they were sort of like more, the manuscript was longer, so I was in a certain phase for a longer time. I remember that the emotional ups and downs were much more intense. Maybe also because the Sealskin Throne follows quite like followed really quickly after sort of the big turmoil of Dragon Watch, and because, as I mentioned so many times, I've given myself the task of actually writing like bit by bit, piece by piece, and having it be like much more messy than I usually want it to be. That it's been a bit smoother. Maybe also because I was just able to write myself out of the problem faster because I didn't, yeah, there wasn't that much space to do it. So, yeah, okay, we have dealt with this now, so onwards. Maybe that's also a reason. I don't know. It's been a very different experience to Dragon Watch, which is always fascinating. That like even with like each book is such a different process. Even though like I've sort of found out my how I like to do things and I usually stick to it, but I can still surprise myself apparently. So it's going to be interesting how long I'm going to put this aside until I work on the second draft. Probably not too long, because I've already talked to people about sort of giving it as like a beta read or to give off a read thing. Um, so yeah, and I'm sort of again carefully optimistic, sort of cautiously optimistic, but carefully works as well. That I can pull it off. Um, so this morning, I'm actually quite happy with the state of the manuscript and where we're at the moment. I will probably take a bit of a social media break once this one's done, just so I mean, I might still keep up to date on sort of my what I'm working on, apart from the first drafts, but because this vlog is really centered around the writing process, and not so much about the editing process. I might just post like smaller updates, what's going on, but I also want to make myself take a break over Christmas. Um, this week, the week just starting, is there's Thanksgiving weekend week, and I've given myself sort of this longer period of 4 days do to work on the beta read feedback for Season of Russell Blossom. So that's going to be my big focus next week, apart from finishing in the next installment, apart from finishing the Sealskin Throne. And yeah, I think we're over. So the big climax has happened. And now we are sort of bringing in the story to something that is, I hate wrapping up all the threads, but at least gives you a satisfying, oh yes, this was worth it, sticking through it. I can envision a future for this character, for um what they're going through. So I think that's where we are going to go next week. So yeah, next week might be the final installment in this current season. Might not be. I don't know. I might like get like a major hiccup and not finish. Let's see. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my sort of more disorganized um, style of vlogging, I would be over the moon if you follow me, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and if you really, really want to hit the notification bell, but I mean, there's only a number of notifications you really can pay attention to, so I'm not too fussed about that actually. If you like to sample my writing, in the description below is a sign up link to my newsletter, and it's not going out every week. It's sort of more of a, I don't know, 3 times a year thing. Um, and as a sign up gift, I'm going to then send you the EPUB link to the first volume in the Slow Moon series, a 6-part fantasy series that is, as of now, completely finished, published, released. And until then, thank you and see you soon.